Locked in a mental institution, James Cole tries to escape, but gets eventually cornered by the guards. He tries fighting them off, but they pin him down, put him on a stretcher, sedate him, restrain him to a bed, and lock him up in a small room. Shortly after, the guards and doctors check out the room only to find that James pulled a Houdini and escaped. In a dream, a young James watches a man getting shot in the back before a blonde in a red dress shouts no and runs to check on him. Adult James wakes up in an underground prison in a post-apocalyptic world in the year 2035. His cellmate Jose tells him scientists want a volunteer to collect some insects from the outside world, so they choose James for this mission. The air in the outside world is poisonous, so James puts on a protective suit and goes up to the outside where he does his job, collecting insects. There are no human beings, as wild animals are roaming the streets. After getting his job done, James comes across the red symbol of the Army of the 12 Monkeys with the words, "We did it," written under it. After returning underground, scientists meet up with James and recruit him to travel 39 years back in time to 1996 to collect information about the source of the virus that killed 5 billion people in that year. This way, the scientists can save the lives of those 5 billion, and the Earth will be just fine.
You aren't going to hurt us, are you, Mr. Cole?
In Baltimore in 1990, a psychiatrist named Catherine gets a call from the police station where a detective tells her they arrested an insane man who attacked 5 police officers while screaming about a virus that will kill humanity. That man doesn't even know what year it is. That's why the police want Catherine to examine him. What's more, the detective tells her this man doesn't have a license or anything about him in the system. When Catherine meets him, that man is none other than James Cole, who frantically yells that he needs to go and collect information about the virus. James then takes a deep breath and notes the air is free of germs, unlike the air in 2035. This was way before the virus spread out, so James asks what year this is, and Catherine tells him it's 1990. The scientists sent him to the wrong year, 1990 instead of 1996. Given that James doesn't know what year it is,
no, 1996 is the future.
Catherine labels him as mentally ill and has the police send him off to a mental institution where he gets to know a mental patient named Jeffrey, who shows him around and rants about the corrupt system. A little later, James meets up with the doctors and tells them about the Army of the 12 Monkeys who'll spread a virus that will kill 5 billion people in 1996. Since this is 1990, James can't find anything about the virus, so he asks to make a phone call and leave a voice message for a number the scientists monitor so they can bring him back to 2035.
Can I just make one telephone call, please?
The doctors don't believe him, but Catherine gives him a chance. However, James ends up calling some lady and asking her to let him leave a voice message for the scientists. Not knowing about any scientist or what James is talking about, the lady just hangs up on him. Since this is 1990, James realizes this is the wrong number, but it's the correct one if he calls in 1996.
I'm supposed to be leaving messages in 1996.
At night, James has the same dream again about the guy getting shot in the airport. After waking up, he checks the window, looking for a way to escape. Jeffrey tells him the window won't open and offers to help him escape the next day. The next morning, Jeffrey comes overjoyed to a sedated James, gives him the key that will help him escape, and tells him he has to start acting now. Jeffrey makes a diversion.
Stop!
And causes a scene to distract the guards, while James sneaks, unlocks the door, sneaks past the doctors, and takes the elevator. James goes to the lower floor, but gets cornered by the guards shortly after. James tries to fight them off, but they all take him down, sedate him, tie him up, and lock him in a small room all by himself. A little later, the manager of the institution, Dr. Fletcher, tells off Catherine for James's escape attempt since James is her patient. Just then, the guards interrupt and tell them something weird has just happened. James disappeared from that locked room. Dr. Fletcher is baffled since James was fully sedated and restrained. He thinks James escaped through the vent. However, that's not the case. As James is taken back to the year 2035 by the scientists, They play a recorded phone call some woman made in 1996 where she tells the secret hideout of the army of the 12 monkeys and points them out as the ones who'll spread the virus and wipe out the planet. The scientists ask James if he knows anything about the recording, but James says no and tells the scientists they sent him to 1990 instead of 1996.
Sent me to the wrong year. It was 1990.
The scientists then show him the symbol of the army of the 12 monkeys, some pictures of its members and their hiding place. James spots Jeffrey in a picture and tells the scientists he met him in a mental institution. It turns out Jeffrey is a member of the 12 monkeys. Given that, the scientists decide to give James a second chance.
Do you want another chance?
And have him travel to 1996 to collect more information about the virus and the 12 monkeys. In return, James will have a full pardon. Again, the scientists end up sending James to the wrong year. This time it's in 1917 during World War I, where James finds himself in the trenches amongst French soldiers. Spotting James, who seems really out of place, the French soldiers hold him at gunpoint and ask him who he is in French. James doesn't understand them. Just then, a bomb explodes nearby, distracting the soldiers. Just then, James encounters an injured Jose carried on a stretcher. Jose cries, asking James where they are as he gets carried away. James tries to go after Jose, but gets shot in the leg and unwillingly time travels to 1996. At this point, Catherine is giving a lecture about weird historical events and people from the past claiming to know about the future. One of those people was Jose in World War I. Catherine talks about him as a French soldier who started speaking fluent English when he got shot,
But that he spoke English fluently.
and shouted that he was sent there to find a germ that would kill 5 billion people in 1996. Clearly, she doesn't know Jose is a time traveler from the year 2035. Following her lecture, Catherine signs copies of her book. A scientist named Dr. Peters approaches her and tells her the planet won't survive with too many human beings in it, so there must be a virus to kill most of them to save it. But Catherine laughs it off and gets busy signing copies for those who attended her lecture. Catherine is now about to leave, but a masked man forces her to get in her car and drive to Philadelphia. Catherine immediately recognizes the man as James Cole and asks him why Philadelphia. James tells her it's where the 12 monkeys are. He needs to stop them from spreading the virus. James joyfully tears up after hearing a beautiful song on the radio and enjoys breathing the fresh air, unlike the poisonous one in 2035. Being forced to drive against her will, Catherine breaks into tears. The two hear a report on the radio about a 9-year-old boy named Ricky mysteriously disappearing. Hearing this, James tells Catherine the boy is just pranking his parents and that he hasn't really disappeared. The next morning, Catherine's absence comes to the police's attention after they check her apartment and find a voice message for her saying that James Cole, who disappeared in 1990, is back and is looking for her. Meanwhile, James dreams again of the long-haired man getting shot in his back at the airport and spots a blonde-haired Catherine crying over him. James wakes up, looks at the tied-up Catherine, and tells her she's the blonde from the dream he's been having since he was a kid, but Catherine doesn't believe him. Just then, Catherine watches a news report about her on TV that she is now missing and that James Cole has something to do with her disappearance. That's why James is a wanted man by the police. As the two continue the drive to Philadelphia, James talks to Catherine about his mission of finding the 12 monkeys and taking the virus from them. Once he has the virus, he'll go to the year 2035 and give it to the scientists so they can make a cure out of it and save humanity. Again, a news report on the radio talks about the 9-year-old Ricky who went missing. James heard this report when he was a kid in 1996, so he tells Catherine the boy is pranking his parents and is hiding in a barn. Not believing James is a time traveler from 2035, Catherine ignores him, thinking he's just a delusional psycho rambling. Reaching Philadelphia, James suddenly tells Catherine to stop driving and gets out of the car to check spray paintings of symbols of the 12 monkeys making a paint trail on the walls. Catherine considers driving away and leaving James behind, but a part of her still believes him, so she gets out of the car and tries to understand him. A homeless old man calls James Bob and warns him some people are watching him.
They can find you anywhere, anytime.
And tracing him through a tracking device planted in his teeth. James and Catherine ignore him and follow the paint trail which leads them to a dark corridor. Afraid, Catherine tries to get away, but James grabs her arm and drags her inside. Inside, the two see two thugs beating someone up. Spotting the duo, the thugs attack them, and one of them holds James at gunpoint. James begs the man not to shoot, but then gives him a low blow and kills him.
Kill me, don't kill me!
The other thug is about to hurt Catherine, but James saves her, beats the thug like crazy, and stomps his head to death. James picks up the thug's gun, while Catherine madly berates him for murdering them. James then drags Catherine out and recognizes the front of the 12 Monkeys hiding place, exactly as he saw it in a picture the scientist showed him earlier. Going inside, James encounters two men and a girl and asks them about the 12 Monkeys. The girl tells him to get lost, but James is not kidding. He holds the three at gunpoint,
You hear me? Don't hurt her!
ties them up, and has them spill all the beans about the 12 Monkeys. James learns that Jeffrey is the leader of the 12 Monkeys. His father is a well-known scientist who studies viruses and injects them into animals to test how effective they are. So Jeffrey made the secret army of the 12 Monkeys to save the animals from his father. James also learns that Jeffrey is now at a party in his father's mansion. The duo then steal a car to drive to Jeffrey's home. James's thigh starts bleeding now in 1996 after he got shot in World War I in 1917. Catherine stops the car and insists on taking out the bullet, and James reluctantly agrees. After Catherine helps him, James says sorry and grabs her hard by the arm to hide her in the trunk. At night, James sneaks past the guards to go inside Jeffrey's home, but forgets his gun under the car. Inside, Dr. Goines, Jeffrey's father, makes a toast
Stimulating and exciting company.
while a guard tells Jeffrey in private that they caught a guy trying to sneak in. That guy is James Cole. When Jeffrey first sees him, he pretends he never saw him before, but stops when James mentions the 12 Monkeys. Jeffrey then welcomes James in, and James tries to ask where and what the virus is. Jeffrey says no, enraging James, who holds him by the neck and yells about how the virus will kill half of humanity in the future. But Jeffrey laughs and tells him no, claiming he's loyal to his father.
The world belongs to the dogs and cats.
The guards come in to kick James out, but he fights them off, runs his way out, and loses the guards. James then makes it to the woods. There, he opens the trunk where he hid Catherine to protect her from Jeffrey's men. Catherine attacks him for locking her up and asks him how many people he killed when he was inside. James tells her he's responsible for killing 5 billion people.
5 billion.
Feeling guilty for failing to know where the virus is, Catherine calls James insane before she spots the police in the woods looking for James. Catherine tells him to turn himself in. Feeling guilty, James goes crazy and says he wants to spend the rest of his life in the woods where the germ-free fresh air is, while jumping and dancing in the river. Catherine honks the horn to attract the cops' attention, but turns around to find James disappeared in thin air into the future. Now that she has been finally found, Catherine is asked about what went down between her and James. The detective shows her a picture of the thug James killed, but Catherine tells him James saved her from that thug. At home, Catherine is still watched by the police just in case James shows up. Catherine then watches the news to find the missing 9-year-old Ricky was just pranking his parents and hiding in the barn all along. This was exactly what James told her when he first heard that this boy went missing, which makes Catherine think James is really a time traveler and that he's right about the virus. James is now in 2035, where the scientists give him a warm welcome for finding out about the leader of the 12 Monkeys responsible for spreading the virus. That's why the scientists give him a full pardon. Having time traveled multiple times, James cries and thinks he's going insane, telling the scientists they're not real and that he wants to go to the past to breathe the fresh air and be with Catherine. Meanwhile, Catherine gets a call from the detective who tells her the bullet she took out from James's thigh was an old bullet from 1917. Catherine goes through her stuff and pictures and spots James in a picture with Jose in World War I. That makes Catherine realize James is for sure a time traveler from the future, and the virus is definitely real. Later, Catherine calls Dr. Goines and asks him if he knows anything about the 12 Monkeys army his son Jeffrey created to steal the virus from him. But Dr. Goins has no clue about it, so he hangs up on her and tells his assistant Dr. Peters to hide the virus just in case.
We ought to review our security procedures.
Meanwhile, James talks to the scientists about what he found out about the virus and that it started in Philadelphia and then spread to certain cities around the world. Wanting more information about the virus, the scientists decide to send James back to 1996.
That was very well done.
Catherine is looking for James and paint sprays the 12 Monkeys' hiding place, warning everybody that there might be a virus inside. Just then, James shows up and reunites with her. Thinking he's going insane, James decides to turn himself in. A cop spots him and follows him, but Catherine takes James away. Eventually, the duo lose the cop and go to a hotel to book a room where they can hide. Catherine asks James what happened when he disappeared earlier in the woods and how he knew the 9-year-old Ricky was hiding in the barn. Having time traveled multiple times, James's mind is pretty messed up and doesn't remember anything.
I don't know.
Catherine shows James his World War I picture with Jose and asks him how he got there. That confuses Catherine and James, who then says he doesn't know. He wants to have a normal life with her and forget all about the virus and time-traveling thing. Catherine asks James about the number he asked to call back in 1990. Just then, a man walks inside and tells them this is his apartment. Catherine tries talking him down, but the man slaps her and decides to stab her.
Really?
James beats the man with the phone, drags him to the bathroom and locks the door, scaring the man. Catherine begs James not to hurt the man, but James opens up and shows her he just took out 2 of his teeth to lose the scientists to make sure they won't find him and drag him back to 2035. Just then, the cops storm the place after the neighbors called them and are about to raid the apartment. However, the duo manage to escape.
Try to blend in.
Catherine goes to call the scientist number. James tried to call in 1990 to see if they really exist and see if James is insane or not. Shortly after, Catherine comes back overjoyed, as it turned out to be the number of a carpet cleaning company, not the scientists. To her, this means James is crazy. There are no scientists and the virus doesn't really exist. She jokingly left a voice message warning the company about the 12 Monkeys, telling them where the 12 Monkeys hide and that they will spread the virus.
The Freedom for Animals Association.
However, James recognizes Catherine's words as the same exact words in the recording the scientists played for him earlier after he returned from his first travel to 1990. Given that, James tells Catherine the scientists received her message, and the virus is definitely real. Now that they can't do anything to stop the virus, the two decide to enjoy the time they have left and buy some clothes. Meanwhile, Jeffrey kidnaps his own father with his 12 monkeys. Thinking Jeffrey is after the virus, Dr. Goins tells his son he doesn't have it anymore after he gave it to someone he trusts to make sure no one steals it. However, Jeffrey is not after the virus. He's after something else. Meanwhile, the duo go to the cinema and watch Vertigo. Catherine puts a wig on James to hide his identity from the police. James then dozes off and wakes up to find that Catherine's not there. He looks for her and finds her at the entrance, only with new clothes and with her hair dyed blonde, exactly as he saw her in his dream. The two decide to travel to Florida and spend the rest of their time watching the ocean. The next morning, the 12 monkeys free all of the dangerous animals from the zoo into the streets. It turns out, the 12 monkeys wanted nothing to do with the virus. They just wanted the animals free from the zoo. The duo reach the airport, which James recognizes as the place he keeps seeing in his dream. While Catherine goes to get the tickets, James finds a telephone and leaves a voice message for the scientists, telling them the 12 monkeys had nothing to do with the virus. There's someone else carrying it.
They didn't do it. It was a mistake. Someone else did it.
James then tells the scientists he's done collecting information about the virus and he's never coming back to them. James then runs into his friend Jose. The scientists receive James' message. Meanwhile, the young James Cole arrives at the airport along with his parents. Catherine pumps into Dr. Peters and then sees him in a newspaper picture working on a virus next to Dr. Goins. Catherine recalls Peters when he first met her at the book signing event and told her the world must end. Just then, Catherine realizes Peters is the one who has the virus. Jose gives James a gun and tells him to shoot the guy who has the virus. James takes the gun and asks who he's supposed to shoot. Catherine rushes to James and tells him about Dr. Peters, who is now asked by the security man what's in the case. Peters takes out the virus tubes, and the security man takes a sniff to see what it is. That marks the starting point of the spread of the virus. Catherine makes a scene, points to Peters, and shouts he's carrying a deadly virus. Peters gets worried and quickly walks off. James takes matters into his own hands, forces his way through, and tries to shoot Peters, who's running away and passing by the young James Cole. As Catherine shouts no, the cops shoot James in the back, killing him. Catherine tries to save him, while the young James Cole watches the scene, shocked. Peters gets away, and Catherine cries over the adult James Cole's body, while the young James Cole tears up, not knowing he's watching his own future death, which explains the dream James keeps having. Catherine spots the young James and smiles at him as the cops take her away. Peters makes it to the plane and meets Jones, one of the future scientists who might have time traveled from the year 2035 to take the virus from Peters. She jokingly says the human race might be in danger, and Peters couldn't agree more. The young James Cole leaves the airport with his parents and watches that plane take off.